I glanced out my window at dawn and froze. In the pale light of morning, a new, glaringly tall fence sliced across the length of my backyard, cutting right through the pool deck like a knife. I rubbed my eyes, half convinced I was hallucinating. But no, the crude pressure-treated wood slats were real. Shockingly real. Each plank staked a bold claim over land that legally belonged to me. And there she was. On the far side of the monstrosity stood someone I knew too well, Denise Whitlock, president of the Fairview Groves HOA and a tyrant in yoga pants. Arms crossed, lips smug, and chin tilted at a triumphant angle. This was the same woman who had cited me for a shade of blue she called too cheerful for my mailbox and once threatened to fine me over wind chimes. Now, apparently, she'd crowned herself queen of boundary lines. I rushed outside, slippered feet soaked in morning dew, rage rising with every step. Denise trailed her fingers along the fresh boards, admiring her work like it was an art installation. "Denise," I said, my voice taut, "mind explaining why there's a fence dissecting my property?" She turned slowly, the corners of her mouth curling in mock amusement. "It's not your property, Ethan," she said sweetly. "According to the HOA's updated boundary plan, this section falls under our jurisdiction. Your pool's too close to the shared path, and for safety, the board approved this fence." "You're welcome." My jaw clenched. "That's not how property law works. I have my original plat from when I bought the house. This is private land. You're trespassing." Denise shrugged. "Your documents might be outdated, but you're free to bring them to the next HOA meeting. Meanwhile, the fence stays. Safety comes first." She walked off, hips swaying, as if she'd won something. She had no idea who she was dealing with. "I'm Ethan Ryder. I passed the bar with a specialization in property law. I work for a title insurance firm, but I know boundary law inside and out." And Denise had just crossed the wrong line. Inside, my wife, Clara, was pouring coffee. She paused when she saw my face. "You look like someone just crashed Christmas." "Denise built a fence through our pool deck," I replied. She blinked. "Through?" I nodded and explained. Her eyes widened, then narrowed with fury. "She can't do that." I grabbed our house purchase folder, spread survey documents across the kitchen table, and reviewed every measurement. My lot extended 5 feet beyond the edge of the pool. There was no shared path. I had every legal right to that space. By noon, I visited the county assessor's office. No new plats, no amendments, and no proposals had been filed by the HOA. Denise's so-called boundary revision was fiction, not even a cleverly disguised one. I called Marvin, an old law school friend. When I explained, he nearly laughed himself off the phone. "A fence through your pool? Man, that's gold. She can't just invent boundaries. If she refuses to remove it, you have grounds for a civil suit." I spent the next day documenting everything. Photos, measurements, signs of trespassing, even footprints and sawdust. Then I sent a formal letter to the HOA, citing relevant statutes and demanding fence removal within 7 days. The response? A bright pink violation notice taped to my door. Unauthorized pool modification. Immediate correction required. My blood boiled. I wrote back, disputing the claim and reiterating their violation. Denise was trying to bully me, but I wasn't budging. Soon, neighbors began to notice. Julie, 2 houses down, asked, "Did she really put that thing up without a vote? That's insane." Tom from across the street added, "Usually the board discusses this stuff. I think Denise forgot you're a lawyer." On day 4, I saw more wood slats appearing. She was expanding the fence. I snapped fresh photos, then scheduled an inspection with the city. No permit. The inspector confirmed on Monday. And even if she applied, it wouldn't pass. It's illegal in height and location. He filed a violation against the HOA. Denise, meanwhile, continued spinning her tale. Neighbors were told the fence was necessary to resolve a long-standing dispute. Some began questioning their own property lines. I prepared for the upcoming HOA meeting. At that point, the fence overshadowed half my pool, creating a bizarre visual eyesore and an emotional burden. Our kids couldn't even swim safely. Wednesday arrived. I walked into the meeting with a briefcase full of evidence. Denise, in her pastel blazer, stood at the front like she was presiding over Congress. "We installed a perimeter fence for liability concerns," she announced. "Mr. Ryder's pool is dangerously close to the common path." I raised my hand. "Madam President, may I respond?" She couldn't say no. I stepped forward. I'm a property attorney, I began. The HOA cannot alter boundary lines or construct on private land without consent or due process. I showed the original plat and the city violation notice. Denise snapped. We acted under an emergency clause. There is no emergency. And no communal walkway in that area. Your own documents prove it. She tried waving a decade-old map referencing potential expansions, but it clearly stated, proposed, not approved. I pushed on. This fence is an illegal structure. It must be removed, or I'll pursue legal action. The board members began fidgeting. The secretary, Mr. Lawson, spoke up. Maybe we should vote. This could expose us to liability. Denise panicked. She turned to personal attacks. Ethan just wants control. He's grandstanding. No, I said calmly. I want my legal rights respected. The crowd buzzed. A few clapped. The meeting adjourned in chaos. That night, I filed suit for trespass and injunction. Denise sent a furious email calling it aggression. I didn't respond. Days later, the HOA's lawyer, a woman named Miranda, contacted me. We'd like to settle. Remove the fence. Cover repairs. Drop your fines. She agreed to bring it to the board. Meanwhile, the city issued a final notice of fines. One morning, I awoke to the sound of hammers. A crew was dismantling the fence under Denise's sour gaze. I watched from the deck, arms folded. She never met my eyes. By afternoon, the monstrosity was gone. I documented the restoration, and a few days later, received confirmation the HOA would cover repair costs. Denise tried spinning the narrative, telling neighbors it was a gesture of goodwill. I didn't bother correcting her. The truth was self-evident. Neighbors, inspired, began pushing back on her arbitrary rulings. Transparency improved. Petty fines declined. Denise's grip weakened. One Saturday, I found her on the sidewalk outside our house. She looked drained. This cost the HOA a lot, she said quietly. It wasn't just about you. No, I said. It was about the rule of law. You didn't follow it. She didn't reply, just walked away. The peace slowly returned. I chose not to join the board. I'd fought my battle and won. One afternoon, as my kids splashed in the pool, I thought about the absurdity of it all. A fence through a pool. Who does that? Apparently, someone who believes they're above the law. But she learned. And now, the only lines in my backyard are the ones etched in concrete and lawfully drawn. Fairview Groves became freer, if only a little. But enough to remind us all. Fences built on arrogance don't last long when they're up against someone who knows which nails to pull.